Section A. Identification information. Intent. This section provides the key information to uniquely identify each person, the home in which he or she resides, and the reason S for assessment. A1. Definition coding. A2. Intent. A2A. Definition process name person's legal name. Use printed letters. Enter in the following order: A1A, given name ALB, initial or middle name ALC, family name ALD. Suffix optional. If the person has no middle name or initial, leave item AL blank. Likewise, leave item AL blank if appropriate. Sex. Gender identity to document the person's sex and self-identified gender. Sex assigned at birth and gender identity shall be asked as two separate questions to provide the most effective and inclusive information about the person. Sex country-specific Canada person's sex that was assigned at birth. A person's biological sex plays an important role in treating certain health conditions and is a potential protective risk factor. It can be used to predict health-related issues and outcomes. Ask the person, what is your sex that was assigned at birth? M. Male coding. F. Female UN. Not assigned male or female, use the code UN for not assigned male or female for persons who are biologically intersex at birth. Gender is the person's sense of being male, female, both, neither, or anywhere along the gender spectrum. A person's gender identity may be the same as or different than their birth assigned sex, coding A2 degrees Celsius, process coding A3, coding M, male F, female OF, other gender identity UNC. Not known NA, not applicable, use the code OCH for other gender identity for persons who do not identify solely as male or female, CC A2 degrees Celsius. Use the code UNC for not known when the person could not answer the asked question or refused to answer the question. Use the code NA for not applicable when the question was not asked because it was inappropriate. For example, the person was severely cognitively impaired. Person self-identifies gender as Canada only if the person responded oath to a 2B gender identity. Ask, what best identifies your current gender identity? Use the open text box to record the person's verbatim response. If the person does not want to respond to the above question, leave the box blank. Note: this item must not contain any names, full or partial, or the person's healthcare identification number or date of birth. Birth date for the month and day of date of birth, enter 2 digits each. Use a leading 0, 0 as a filler if a single digit. Use 4 digits for the year. For example, January 2nd, 1918 should be entered as 1918 year 0, 1 month, 0, 2 day of 4. Coding marital status, choose the answer that describes the current marital status of the person. If the person is in a common law relationship, score the item 2 for married. If the person is in a same-sex relationship that is legally recognized as a marriage, score the item 2 for married. If the person is in a long-term same-sex relationship that is not legally recognized as a marriage, score the item 3 for partner, significant other. 1. Never married. 2. Married. 3. Partner, significant other. 4. Widowed. 5. Separated. 6. Divorced. If the healthcare identification number is unknown, enter 1 in the leftmost box and leave the remainder of the boxes blank. This would be the case if the person is cognitively impaired and there is no one available to provide the necessary information, if the person has lost his or her card, or if the person does not have the information at hand. If the person is not a resident of Canada, or is a resident of Canada but his or her services are paid for by the federal government, enter 2 in the leftmost box and leave the remainder of the boxes blank. This would be the case if the person is a member of the Canadian Armed Forces or the RCMP, a 5B province or territory issuing healthcare identification number. From the table below, record the 2-digit code of the province or territory that issued the healthcare identification number. NL Newfoundland and Labrador, SK Saskatchewan, PE, Prince Edward Island, AB Alberta, NS Nova Scotia, BC, British Columbia, NB New Brunswick, NT Northwest Territories, QC Quebec, YouTube, Yukon, on Ontario, Nunavut, NB Manitoba. If the province, territory is unknown, enter 0 in the leftmost box and leave the remainder of the boxes blank. This would be the case if the person is cognitively impaired and there is no one available to provide the necessary information, or if the person does not know the information, if the person is not a resident of Canada or is a resident of Canada but his or her services are paid for by the federal government, enter 1 in the leftmost box and leave the remainder of the boxes blank. This would be the case if the person is a member of the Canadian Armed Forces or the RCMP. A5 degrees Celsius. Coding case record number, record the person's case record number in the boxes provided, beginning with the leftmost box. If the case record number is less than 12 digits, leave the extra boxes blank. A 6. Intent definition coding facility number, country-specific note. If not in Canada, please consult your addendum. To record the identification code of the facility where the assessment is being conducted, the identification code assigned to the facility by the province, territory. This code must contain a total of 5 alpha or numeric characters. Begin in the leftmost box. Enter 1 digit or letter per box. The first character, a letter or number, indicates the province, territory in which the facility is located. The CIHI assigned province. Territory codes for the first character are 0 Newfoundland and Labrador, 7 Saskatchewan, 1 Prince Edward Island, 8 Alberta, 2 Nova Scotia, 9 British Columbia, 3 New Brunswick, 4 Quebec, 5 Ontario, 6 Manitoba and Northwest Territories, Yukon, 5 Nunavut, 7. Intent definitions, current payment sources, country-specific note. If not in Canada, please consult your addendum. To record the organization S or governmental program S, responsible for payment of the services rendered by the facility caring for this person. The person may be receiving services paid for by a mix of publicly or privately funded organizations or programs. A7A, provincial or territorial government plan. This province or territory, person resides in the province or territory covered under the provincial territorial healthcare plan. A7B, provincial or territorial government plan, other province or territory, person does not err but resides in another province or territory, and his or her payment is covered by another provincial plan. Also included are new residents to the 10 Section A identification information, province who are still covered by the health plan of the province, territory from which they came. A7 degrees Celsius. Federal government, Veterans Affairs Canada, VAC, person, is fully covered by VAC of the Federal Government of Canada. This includes veterans hospitalized for recognized service-related conditions. A7D, Federal Government, First Nations and Inuit Health Branch, FNIHB person holds First Nation or Inuit status, so his or her services are specifically covered by the FNIHB, formerly MSB, of Health Canada, Non-Insured Health Benefits Program. This may also include other health programs for First Nations and Inuit. A7E, Federal Government, other person qualifies as RCMP or Canadian Armed Forces personnel, an inmate of a federal penitentiary, or a refugee whose services are specifically covered under a federal plan. A7 degrees Fahrenheit. Workers' Compensation Board, WCB, WSAB, person is covered by the Workers' Compensation Board or the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board or equivalent, regardless of the province or jurisdiction. A7G, Canadian resident, insurance person's insurance carrier is responsible for payment. A7H, Canadian resident, public trustee pay, describes a circumstance in which, in accordance with applicable law, a public trustee or guardian, or an individual holding a similar office in any province or territory, makes payment for the medical treatment and, or health, support services on behalf of a person who is deemed to be mentally incapable. A 7I, Canadian resident self-pay person is responsible for payment from personal resources. 1. First assessment, a comprehensive assessment using the Inter-RAI LTCF and caps required by day 4 of the person's stay. Note that this code is also used if the person is being readmitted subsequent to a discharge. 2. Routine reassessment. This assessment ensures that the care plan is correct and up to date. It also should identify instances where significant changes have occurred. If significant change is noted, code 4 for significant change in status reassessment. 3. Return assessment, an assessment conducted when the person returns from the hospital or re-enters the facility after a short planned absence. 4. Significant change in status reassessment, a comprehensive reassessment prompted by a major change that is not self-limited, that impacts on more than one area of the person's health status, and that requires interdisciplinary review or revision of the care plan to ensure that appropriate care is given. When there is a significant change, the assessment must be completed by the end of the 3rd calendar day following the determination that a significant change has occurred. See the procedure described below for assessing whether a significant change, either improvement or decline, has occurred. 5. Discharge assessment covers last 3 days of service. Use this code to cover the last 3 days of service whenever a person is discharged from the facility and the decision is made to have a comprehensive assessment, for example, at permanent discharge. 6. Discharge tracking only. Use this code when a person is discharged and no comprehensive assessment is regarded necessary, for example, at temporary discharge to a hospital or other therapeutic setting, or when a person returns home from respite care with an anticipated return to this facility at a later date. 7. Other, for example, research. Any assessment conducted outside of the established assessment schedule for reasons such as quality assurance, clinical research, confirmation of the appropriateness of the current plan, not the routine follow-up, reassessment, development of acuity scale, community, needs assessment, etc. Significant change criteria. A significant change reassessment is required if a decline or an improvement is consistently noted in 2 or more areas that affect the person's plan of care. The following list provides examples of possible situations that warrant a significant change reassessment. Examples of decline: Any decline in ADL physical functioning where a person is newly coded as 4, 5, 6, or 8, extensive assistance, maximal assistance, total dependence activity did not occur. Person's decision-making changes from 0 or 1 to 2, 3, 4, or 5. Person's incontinence pattern changes from 0 or 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, or 8, or begins to use a urinary collection device. Emergence of an unplanned weight loss problem, 5% change in 30 days or 10% change in 180 days. Begin to use a trunk restraint or a chair that prevents rising for a person when it was not used before. Emergence of a condition, disease in which person is judged to be unstable. Emergence of a pressure ulcer with a code off 2 or higher when no ulcers were previously present at that stage or higher. Overall deterioration of person's condition or person receives more support, for example, in performing ADLs or in decision-making. This is not an exhaustive list. Continued. Examples of improvement. Any improvement in ADL physical functioning where a person is newly coded as 0, 1, 2, or 3 when previously scored as a 4, 5, 6, or 8. Person's decision-making changes from 3, 4, or 5 to 0 to 2. Person's incontinence pattern changes from 2, 3, 4, or 5 to 0 or 1. Overall improvement of person's condition. Person receives fewer supports. Rules for completion of assessments when the person is discharged before the assessment is completed. Person is discharged before the first assessment is completed. For example, a person is discharged or dies on the second day of his or her stay. Complete LTCF sections A, B, R, and S. All other sections may or may not be completed. Save any data that has already been collected as part of the person's clinical record. In this case, the last day of stay, item R1, must be within the 3-day assessment period leading up to assessment reference date. Section R, discharge, provides justification for an incomplete assessment to be saved in an electronic database. Person is discharged during the 3-day assessment period of the first assessment, but the assessment is completed. Preferably, again, Section R, discharge, will now also be completed. Alternatively, a discharge assessment can be completed in addition to the first assessment. Person is discharged during the 3-day assessment period of a routine reassessment. Change the reassessment instantly into a discharge assessment. Preferably, this should be a discharge of Code 5, that is, a comprehensive assessment of the last 3 days of service. Assessment reference date. Intent definition coding to establish a common temporal reference point for all staff participating in the person's assessment. Although staff members may work on completing a person's inter-RAI LTCF on different days, establishment of the assessment reference date ensures the commonality of the assessment period, that is, starting the clock, so that all assessment items refer to the person's objective performance and health status during the same period of time. Assessment reference date, the designated endpoint of the common observation period for items on the LTCF. Almost all LTCF items refer to the person's status over a designated time period, generally 3 days. All LTCF items refer back in time from this point with the assessment reference date, ARD, the last day of a 3-day period for 3-day items, the last day of a 30-day period for 30-day items, etc. For the initial admission assessment, the RDI can be any day starting with the 3rd day following admission, the first possible date for completing the admission assessment. For a follow-up routine assessment, select the common reference date within the period the assessment must be completed. This date is the endpoint to which all LTCF items must refer. For admission assessment, staff may begin to gather some information on the day of admission. CAPs must be completed within the required timeframes for completion of the LTCF, for example, within 4 days of admission. For a routine reassessment, staff are likely to have extensive data on hand. In such cases, a designated observation period of 3 days is usually established. The date on which the observation period ends is the assessment reference date. All staff who participate in the assessment must, however, agree that their description of the person reflects the person's status in this 3-day period. For the month and day of the assessment, enter 2 digits each. Use a leading 0, 0 as a filler if a single digit. Use 4 digits for the year. Example of how to code assessment reference date. For a first assessment, Mr. M was admitted to your facility on August 23, 2011. Your facility's policy states that all assessments for new admissions shall be completed by the end of the 4th day of residency. Therefore, staff decided to conduct their observations, tests, and interviews with the person, family, and other staff, and chart reviews during the first 3 days of the person's stay. During this time, they record pertinent findings in the person's record and, where appropriate, on the inter-RAI LTCF form. They record the endpoint to the inter-RAI LTCF observation period as follows, giving staff another day in which to complete the CAPs. 201, 1 year 082, 6-month day at 10. Intent process persons express goals of care, enter primary goal in boxes at bottom to capture the person's reasons for seeking care or services. This item provides an opportunity for the person to voice his or her own goals in order for the provider to understand better what the person expects or hopes to experience and how to better individualize care. As the person's goals for care may change over time, this item is included in the initial and subsequent reassessments for persons receiving care or about to receive care or services at the facility. Use this box to document outcomes that the person hopes to achieve as a result of receiving services. Outcomes can relate to almost anything, including improved functional performance, a return to health, a change in living situation, improved social relations, or relief of symptoms as part of end-of-life care. Talk to the person and phrase your questions in the most general way possible. For example, for the initial assessment, ask, "Why are you here? Why have you been admitted or come to live in this home? What benefits do you expect to experience? How can we best meet your needs?" On subsequent reassessments, ask whether the person has been satisfied with his or her care experience and whether he or she would like changes in how he or she lives or is cared for. Some persons will be unable to articulate a goal, an expected outcome, or even a reason for seeking services. They may say they do not know, or that someone else said to come here, or that their relatives are unable to continue caring for them and they do not know where else to go. Whatever the person responds should be considered valid. If the person asks you to clarify what he or she might expect from the care program, follow your usual facility policy in answering such questions. Use the large open text box to record the person's verbatim response. Note, this item must not contain any names, full or partial, or the person's healthcare identification number, date of birth, sex, or gender. Code the person's primary goal of care in the single line of boxes at the bottom, entering one letter in each box. Abbreviate if necessary. Enter unknown if the person is unable to articulate a goal of care. BSURETAKEMEDSA11. Intent process coding a 12. Intent coding time since last hospital stay to document the amount of time since the person's most recent hospitalization as a measure of clinical instability and care trajectory. Review the clinical record. If available, hospital discharge summaries are generally the most efficient means to gather this information. If not documented elsewhere, consult with the person or family. Code for the most recent instance in the last 90 days. Calculate the number of days between the most recent hospital stay in the last 90 days and the assessment reference date. Code 0 if the person has not been hospitalized in the last 90 days. 0. No hospitalization within 90 days 1. 31 to 90 days ago 2. 15 to 30 days ago 3. 8 to 14 days ago 4. In last 7 days 5. Now in hospital return date to document the date the previously discharged person was readmitted to the long-term care facility. This item is completed only if a 8 reason for assessment is coded 3 for return assessment. For the month and day of the return date, enter 2 digits each. Use a leading 0, 0 as a filler if a single digit. Use 4 digits for the year. Example, February 1st, 2019. 21-9-0-2-0, 1 year month day. This item can be left blank if a 8, reason for assessment, is not coded 3 for return assessment.